When live. Okay, it says I'm live. Here's my stream link. Let me refresh to make sure it's working. And let me spam the link everywhere. Okay. Live streaming myself making videos on YouTube. Okay. Put it under new videos. I'm not gonna spam it everywhere. I'm just gonna put it in a few places. Yeah, not too many places today. Errors occurred. What's going on? Okay, whatever. Okay, there we go. Okay, hopefully everyone should be able to hear me no problem, and let's get this started. So, what's up guys? I'm going to be recording a video live. I've done editing live, I've never done recording live though, so kind of curious to see how that goes along. Let me just resize my windows. And let's get started. So, this video is going to be 16 reasons why I'm boycotting future SAO anime projects. I'm mostly going to be ignoring the chat. This stream more is just a view, so that way you guys could see how I tend to record and edit my videos more than anything else. So, I'm just going to be doing my thing as I normally do and not really worry about anything else. So, let's get started on this. Okay, my Yeti is hooked up. In the right place. MP3. Mic test, mic test, mic test, mic test, mic test. I think it's a bit too loud. Let me check though. Mic test, mic test, mic test, mic test, mic test. I'd say it's fine. I'll reduce it a little bit though. And let's get started. So how do I want to introduce the video? So I'm doing semi-scripted this time, as in that I have the points I want to discuss, but I don't go specifically in depth by writing an entire script for this, just because I don't want to script this because it would take forever. So, something along the lines of, hi guys, I'm Mark Ray 100. So obviously my standard intro, but what do I want to say beyond that? So I'm thinking I could go multiple routes. I could start off with a gag by like, A1, blank you, and I'd take like a curse from somewhere else because I don't curse in real life. Maybe I'd take like a thing from like Angry Joe or Angry Video Game. No, I'll take Angry Joe. That's perfect. Yeah, that's perfect. It's gonna start out with an Angry Joe. Let me find which clip though. Angry Joe, you. I don't curse, so. Oh, there's a whole compilation. Perfect. Wait, does he have one for the Elder Scrolls, maybe? Oh, perfect, right there. Perfect. That's exactly what I'm going to use. That is 100% perfect. I think I might have actually used that for a previous video. I don't know. I don't care. I'm using that. I'm going to take that clip. I'm going to put it at the start of the video. And then I'm going to just have that go straight into SAO. So let's get started with this. Okay. How am I going to start this again? Okay, you done blanked it up. Then how am I going to transition that is the question. I know how I'll do this because my first point is the pacing. I know how I'm going to do that. So for this first one, I actually want to write out a script because I'm going to be talking as fast as possible for this first one, just so that way I could get my point across with the pacing. The pacing for SAO Season 3 is... I want to be like really creative with how I word this, but I don't know how to word it good. No. Calling the pacing for SAO Season 3 thus far awful would be like... Would be fair to it, would be kind to it, would be an understatement. I don't want to say would be an understatement because I use that term a lot. So I want to be a bit more outside the box with how I word this. Calling the pacing for SAO Season 3 thus... I'm going to actually practice that. Calling the pacing for SAO Season 3 thus far awful would... Yeah, perfect. I could talk that fast. I can maintain that pretty easily as long as I have a script open. It would be an insult to something, but what else has awful pacing? Thus far awful would be too kind. I'm just gonna go the easy way out. Will be an understatement. The scenes move along so fast that the show doesn't give any breathing room for the viewer to digest what the actual... I'm going to probably put a censor there, and I'm not going to say it out loud, but the actual blank is going on. If you haven't realized it yet, reason I'm talking this fast to illustrate that exact point. So let me try saying it as fast as possible just to practice it. Calling the pacing for SAO Season 3 calling the pacing for SAO Season 3 calling the pacing for SAO Season 3 thus far awful will be an understatement. The scene moves along so fast that the show doesn't give any breathing room for the viewer to digest what the actual means is going on. If you haven't realized it yet, the reason I'm talking so fast is to illustrate that exact... Perfect. I could probably do it faster, maybe. I'd need a bunch of practice attempts for that, though, and I need to make it longer. Maybe I'll do something before the pacing, because going straight from the Angry Joe thing to this would be a transition issue, not a pacing issue. So yeah, I'll do a transition. Transition, okay. And maybe I'll do that last line at the end. What the actual blank is going on. A great example of this is in, I think it was like episode 5 or 6. Let me check. Which one was it? Episode 6. Then episode 6, where the character Kikuoka drops 20 bombs on the characters without even a second to breathe, and cutting a lot of the back and forth on the ethics and thoughts about what's going on. As a result, anyone who can, even if you do understand what's actually going on, the sheer magnitude of it is lost on the viewer. And I got so many Discord messages. Oh. The sheer magnitude of it is lost on the viewer. And the majority of the impact is lost. Let me find a good scene in Excel World to compare it to. Shows Excel World. What's a really good screwed up scene in Excel World? That's a great question, actually. There's a ton of really screwed up things, but... Okay, episode 1 was the introduction. Episode 2 introduced Brain Burst. Episode 3 started things with Chiyu. Episode 4... Maybe episode 4? Probably a thing where... So let me think at a more fundamental level, actually, in that case. At a more fundamental level, what's happening in the scene I'm comparing is that Kikuoka is discussing to Asuna and Rinko the entire idea behind the STL. So it's an info dump and an exposition dump. So comparing it to a scene where two characters are fighting over... No, it's a perfect comparison, because the whole point is that they cut the stuff about the characters fighting over the ethics of it. Yeah, that's the whole point of the scene. So what's a good thing where they fight over the... Probably, yeah, the Black King versus the other kings. Yeah, you know what? I'll make a special cut of Excel World to demonstrate that fact. That's perfect. illustrate my point, let's take a scene from Excel World, a series written by the same author but with a phenomenal adaptation, and cut it in a specific way to match that of what was done to the SAO adaptation. By cutting the second, by cutting, pacing is as when you learn video, if you're a video editor like me, you understand the value of how the difference in pacing, how a few frames can make a noticeable and impactful difference in terms of the pacing of your videos. The same, even if 100% of the content was covered, which it wasn't, without a second to breathe between reveals, it completely ruins any impact it may have had. For reasons that will be discussed later on, A1 rushed the adaptation, both in terms of actually making the stinking thing and in terms of the pacing and content of the show, and as a result, the result is a fundamentally flawed adaptation from a not a production standpoint, from not a production standpoint, a fundamentally flawed adaptation independent of anything that was included in the thing to begin with. If you are wondering why I am speaking so fast, additionally, if you are wondering why I am speaking so fast, it is to illustrate this exact point that that pacing is one of the most important parts of an adaptation, and screwing it up, especially screwing it up can ruin an adaptation before even if every other aspect is perfect. Okay, let me save this, by the way, because this is not saved. Okay, video editing, line boycotting SAO, rough script. Okay. Okay, here we go. Let's do this. Okay. Let me grab some water. Okay, let's do this. 3, 2, 1. Calling the pacing for SAO Season 3 thus far awful would be an understatement. The scenes move along so fast that the show doesn't give any breathing room for the viewer to digest what the actual thing is going... Come on. Calling the pacing for SAO Season 3 come on. Calling the pacing for SAO Season 3 thus far awful would be an understatement. The scenes move along so fast that the show doesn't give any breathing room for the viewers to digest what the... Calling the pacing for SAO Season 3 thus far awful will be an understatement. The scenes move along so fast that the show doesn't give any breathing room for the viewer to digest what the actual is going on. No. I'm gonna one-shot this. I don't care. Calling the pacing for SAO Season 3 awful will be an understatement. The scenes move along so fast that the show doesn't give any breathing room for the viewers to digest what the actual is going on. I'm one-shotting this. I don't care. Ready. Calling the pacing for SAO Season 3 awful will be... Take 10. I'm one-shotting this. Go. Calling the... Take 11. I'm one-shotting this commentary. Calling the pacing for SAO... Take 12. I'm one-shotting this part of the commentary. I don't care. Calling the pacing for SAO Season 3 thus far awful will be... Too slow. That's too slow. I gotta do it faster. I gotta go faster. Okay. Take 13. I'm one-shotting this. Go. Calling the pacing for SAO 3... Take 14. Go. Calling the pacing for SAO Season 3 thus far awful will be an understatement. The scenes move along so fast that the show doesn't give any breathing room for the viewer to... I'm mumbling. Let me hear what the result is, actually. Take 14. Go. Calling the pacing for SAO Season 3 thus far awful will be an understatement. The scenes move along so fast that the show doesn't give any breathing room for the viewer to... mumbling. Okay, let's try it again. It's clear enough. 3, 2, 1. Take 14. I'm one-shotting this commentary. Go. Calling the... come on, no. Oh, that was take 16. Take 16. I'm one-shotting this part of the commentary. Go. Calling the pacing for SEO Season 3 thus far awful would be an understatement. The scenes move along so fast that the show doesn't give any breathing room for the viewer to digest what the actual is going on. A great example of this is in episode 6, where Kikuoka drops 20 bombs on the characters without a second to breathe, and cutting a lot of the back and forth and the ethics and thoughts of what's going on. As a result, even if you understand what is actually going on, the sheer magnitude of it is lost on the viewer, and the majority of the impact is lost. To illustrate my point, let's take a look at Excel World, a series written by the same author with a phenomenal adaptation, and is cut in a specific way that makes it... Okay, I see how I screwed that up. Okay, ready. 3, 2, 1. I'm one-shotting this part of the commentary. Give me props in the comments for this. Go. Okay. Take 18. I'm one-shotting this part of the commentary. Give me props in the comments if I get it. Go. Calling the pacing for SEO Season 3. Thus far. Take 19. I'm one-shotting this part of the commentary. Give me props in the comments once I get it. Go. Calling the pacing for SEO 3. Come on, I can't get it. I can't get it. Take 21. I'm one-shotting this part of the commentary. If once I get it, give me props in the comments. Let's go. Calling the pacing for SEO Season 3 thus far awful will be an understatement. The season move along so fast that the show doesn't give any breathing room for the viewer to digest what the actual is going on. A great example of this is in episode 6, where Kikuoka drops 20 bombs on the characters without a second of breathing room to cut, and cuts back and forth on the ethics and thoughts of what's going on. As a result, even if you do understand what's actually going on, the sheer magnitude of it is lost on the viewer, and the majority of the impact is lost. To illustrate my points, let's take a scene from Excel World, a series written by the same author but with a phenomenal adaptation, and cut it in a specific way to match that of what was done to the SAO adaptation. If you're a video editor like me, you understand how a few frames can make a noticeable and impactful difference in terms of the pacing of your videos. Even if 100% of the content is covered, which is not in this case, without a second of breathing room between reveals, it completely ruins any impact they may have had. Come on. So close. That was so close. Let me hear that back, because that was a long stretch. Take 21. I'm one-shotting this part of the commentary. If once I get it, give me props in the comments. Let's go. Calling the pacing for SEO Season 3 thus far awful will be an understatement. The season move along so fast that the show doesn't give any breathing room for the viewer to digest what the actual is going on. A great example of this is in episode 6, where Kikuoka drops 20 bombs on the characters without a second of breathing room to cut, and cuts back and forth on the ethics and thoughts of what's going on. As a result, even if you do understand what is actually going on, the sheer magnitude of it is lost on the viewer, and the majority of the impact is lost. To illustrate my points, let's take a scene from Excel World, a series written by the same author but with a phenomenal adaptation, and cut it in a specific way to match that of what was done to the SAO adaptation. If you're a video editor like me, you understand. I'm noticing a lot of echo on my mic. I don't care to deal with it right now, though. Whatever. Let's go. Take 21. Once I get this down, give me props in the comments. I'm one-shotting this. Let's go. Calling the pacing for SEO Season 3 thus far awful would be an understatement. The scenes move along so fast that the show doesn't give any breathing room for the viewer to digest what the actual is going on. A great example is how in episode 6, when Kikuoka drops 20 reveals on the characters without even a second of breathing room, and cuts a lot of the back and forth of the ethics and thoughts of what's going on. As a result of I lost my place. Take 22. If I get this, give me props in the comments. Calling the pacing for SEO Season 3 thus far awful will be an understatement. The scenes move along so fast that the show doesn't give any breathing room for the viewer to digest what the actual is going on. A great example of this is in episode 6, where Kikuoka drops 20 reveals on the characters without even a second of breathing room, and cutting a lot of the back and forth of the ethics and thoughts of what's going on. As a result, even if you do understand what's actually going on, the sheer magnitude of it is lost on the viewer, and when the majority of the impact is... come on. Take 23. Let's see if I finally get this. Go. Calling the pacing of... Take 24. Once I finally get this, give me props in the comments. This is so hard. Calling the pacing for SEO Season 3 thus far awful will be an understatement. The scenes move along so fast that the show doesn't give any breathing room for the viewer to digest what the actual is going on. A great example of this is in episode 6, where Kikuoka drops 20 reveals on the characters without even a second of breathing room, and cuts a lot of the back and forth of the ethics and thoughts of what's going on. As a result, even if you understand what's actually going on, the sheer magnitude of it is lost on the viewer, and the majority impact is lost. To illustrate my point, let's take a scene from Excel World, a series written by the same author but with a phenomenal adaptation, and cut in the specific way to match that of what was done to the SAO adaptation. If you're a video editor like me, you'll understand how a few frames can make a noticeable and impactful difference in terms of the pacing of your videos. Even if 100% of the content was covered, which it isn't, without a second in between the reveals, it completely ruins any impact it may have had. For reasons that will be discussed later on, A1 rushed the adaptation both in terms of its actual content and in terms of the pacing of the show, and as a result, it resulted in a fundamentally flawed adaptation, independent of anything that was actually included in the thing to begin with. Additionally, if you were wondering why I'm speaking so fast, it's to illustrate this exact point, that the pacing was one of the most important parts of the adaptation, and screwing it up can ruin an adaptation, even if every other aspect is perfect. Finally got it. Take 24. Once I finally get this, give me props in the comments. This is so hard. Calling the pacing for SEO Season 3 thus far awful will be an understatement. The seasons move along so fast that the show doesn't give any breathing room for the viewer to digest what the actual is going on. A great example of this is in episode 6, where Kikoba drops 20 reveals on the characters that even a second of breathing room and cuts a lot of the back and forth of the ethics and thoughts of what's going on. As a result, even if you understand what's actually going on, the sheer magnitude of it is lost on the viewer, and the majority impact is lost. To illustrate my point, let's take a scene from Excel World, a series written by the same author but with a phenomenal adaptation, cut in the specific way to match that of what was done to the SAO adaptation. If you're a video like me, you'll understand how a few frames can make a noticeable and impactful difference in terms of the pacing of your videos. Even if 100% of the content was covered, which it isn't, without a second in between the reveals, it completely ruins any impact it may have had. For reasons that will be discussed later on, A1 rushed the adaptation both in terms of its actual content and in terms of the pacing of the show, and as a result, it resulted in a fundamentally flawed adaptation, independent of anything that was actually included in the thing to begin with. Additionally, if you were wondering why I'm speaking so fast, it's to illustrate this exact point, that the pacing was one of the most important parts of the adaptation, and screwing it up can ruin an adaptation, even if every other aspect is perfect. Finally got it. That was hard. That was... I mean, I could definitely try one more time, record it better. I'm going to try one more time just to see if I could get it. I'm going to try one more time. I saved that one, though, so that way, if I can't get it again, that way I have that one. Okay, let's try it one more time. 3, 2, 1, go. If I get this, props in the comments. Calling the pacing for SAO Season 3 thus far awful will be an understatement. The seasons move along so fast that the show doesn't give any breathing room for the viewer to digest what the actual is going on. A great example of this is in episode 6, where Kikoga drops 20 reveals on the characters without even a second of breathing room and cuts a lot of the back and forth and the ethics and thoughts of what's going on. As a result, even if you do understand what's actually going on, the sheer magnitude of it is lost on the viewer and the majority of the impact is lost. To illustrate my point, let's take a scene from Excel World, a series written by the same author but with a phenomenal adaptation and cut in a specific way to match that of what was done to the SAO adaptation. If you're a video editor like me, you'll understand how a few frames can make a noticeable and impactful difference in terms of the pacing of your videos. Even if 100% of the content is covered, which in this case it isn't, without a second to breathe between the reveals, it completely ruins any impact it may have had. For reasons that will be discussed later on, A1 rushed the adaptation both in terms of actually making the stinking thing and in terms of the pacing and the content of the show, and as a result, it's a fundamentally flawed adaptation, independent of anything that was actually included in the thing to begin with. Additionally, if you're wondering why I'm speaking so fast, it's to illustrate this exact point, that the pacing is one of the most important parts of an adaptation, and screwing it up can ruin the entire adaptation, even if every other aspect is 100% perfect. I nailed that. I'm listening back on that. I think I nailed that one. If I get this, props in the comments. Calling the pacing for SAO Season 3 thus far awful will be an understatement. The seasons move along so fast that the show doesn't give any breathing room for the viewer to digest what the actual is going on. A great example of this is in episode 6, where Kikoga drops 20 reveals on the characters without even a second of breathing room and cuts a lot of the back and forth and the ethics and thoughts of what's going on. As a result, even if you do understand what's actually going on, the sheer magnitude of it is lost on the viewer and the majority of the impact is lost. To illustrate my point, let's take a scene from Excel World, a series written by the same author but with a phenomenal adaptation and cut in a specific way to match that of what was done to the SAO adaptation. If you're a video editor like me, you'll understand how a few frames can make a noticeable and impactful difference in terms of the pacing of your videos. Even if 100% of the content is covered, which in this case it isn't, without a second to breathe between the reveals, it completely ruins any impact it may have had. For reasons that will be discussed later on, A1 rushed the adaptation both in terms of actually making the stinking thing and in terms of the pacing and the content of the show, and as a result, it's a fundamentally flawed adaptation, independent of anything that was actually included in the thing to begin with. Additionally, if you're wondering why I'm speaking so fast, it's to illustrate this exact point, that the pacing is one of the most important parts of an adaptation, and screwing it up can ruin the entire adaptation, even if every other aspect is 100% perfect. Okay, what file type is this? MP3. Okay, so I nailed that. The second time was better. That second attempt was better. I think I'm gonna cut, sorry for the noise. I think I'm gonna cut some of the stuttering from that to really nail it home. Okay, also I'm doing a thing where I just explain what happened there. I just one-shot that entire commentary. Epic. Okay. Anyways, here is a side-by-side comparison of a scene from Excel World with... come on, no. Sorry for any background noise. Just sorry for any background noise. Can you guys hear the background noise? Okay, what am I gonna say after this anyways? Okay. Yeah, that's audible. Joni, I'm recording something and my microphone can hear you. Okay, hopefully she's gone now. Okay. Now, how am I gonna transition from that? Okay, I somehow nailed that commentary in only like 25 attempts, so yeah. Anyways, the point of that was to illustrate how pacing really makes a huge difference in terms of an adaptation, and when you rush something, like I just did with that commentary, it results in a much worse product. Now, I'm gonna cut the scene from Excel World, and oh, no, come on, no. I somehow managed to record that thing in only 25 attempts, which sounds like a lot, but I keep in mind for some of my other videos, I've done like a couple hundred attempts for some of the commentary, so whatever, that's just video production stuff. Anyways, though, I want to illustrate the point that in terms of pacing, no, come on. I somehow managed to only record that in 25 attempts, which is pretty impressive considering a lot of my, no, it's too much fluff, okay. The point of that was to illustrate the idea that if you rush something, it really screws up the pacing, and that pacing is one of the most key aspects of a video or of a TV show. And I can make a whole entire video just demonstrating through a lot of the videos that I've made in the past how a couple frames, a couple tenths of a second could actually make a massive difference in terms of the feel of a video. If you want to see a great example of that, look at my Neptune's Endless Journey video series. It's like a fake cutscene series of the Neptunia series that I was able to make, and the first video, the pacing is completely screwed up in my opinion because it's around, I think, like 1/20th or 1/10 of a second slower than in the second video, and I cringe at the first video not because of the contents but because of the pacing that's 1/20th of a second slower in terms of the actual text scroll. It makes a very big difference, and you can see and feel it if you actually watch something like that. That's the point I'm trying to illustrate. So, you know what? This is too long. Okay, let's try that again. As you probably understand, the point of that whole massive... As you probably understand, the point of that entire fast-paced commentary thing was to illustrate the idea that if you increase the pacing so much that it... Come on. As you probably get, the purpose of that whole section of commentary was to demonstrate how pacing is one of the most important parts of making either a video or a TV show. And if you screw up the pacing, even if the entire thing otherwise is 100% perfect, it will screw everything up. Even if my script was perfect, my editing was perfect, and everything else was perfect, if the pacing of that bit of commentary was off, which it was on purpose, it makes it that you don't want to watch the video. And I could guarantee a lot of people will have clicked off as soon as that section started. I don't care about the views. For anyone that's still watching, good, you're watching because you actually care about what I have to say, and that's the point. That if you screw up the pacing, no, how am I gonna say this? Okay. If you're still watching after that mess, that really just no. I can almost guarantee that a lot of people will have clicked off the video as soon as that long extended section of commentary where I talked really fast started. And the reason it really just demonstrates my point. And if you guys want, I'll post the analytics for this video a month after it's up, just so that way you can get a really good idea of how many people clicked off for that. But my point being is that a lot of people will click off from that simply because of the fact that the pacing is completely off. Even if I nail down the editing 100% perfect, if I nail down the commentary, if I nail down the spelling and grammar, if everything is 100% perfectly nailed down except for that one bit of the pacing, then it screws things up so bad that people won't want to watch anymore. And that's my point with SAO. A lot of people might not have noticed it, but I'm a video editor that's been editing for years now. My experience with Sony Vegas alone is like 7 years. And while for the majority of that time I really wasn't nearly as good as I am today, that time comes with experience. And my point with that is that once you... Come on, I screwed it up. I was doing so good in the beginning. It's so hard to do this. Okay. I can guarantee you that a lot of people probably clicked off the second that section of the extended... come on. I can almost guarantee you that a lot of people clicked off the second I started talking really fast. And once they notice that it's really an extended clip of me just talking really fast, they probably more... Come on, no. I can almost guarantee you that the second I started talking really fast, a lot of people clicked off, and the more and more dragged on, the more people clicked off. And that perfectly illustrates my point that the pacing of something is one of the most important parts of it. The pacing of a video or a TV show is one of the most important things you can possibly nail down, completely independent of everything else that has to do with the thing. A great example of this is what am I talking about? This is what happens when you do non-scripted stuff and I hit record by accident. I can almost guarantee you that a large portion of people that were watching the video likely clicked off the second I started talking real fast. And that's deliberately. I don't care about the views for my channel. I've been doing this for 9 years. I recognize my channel is never going to blow up the way that a lot of other channels can. That's simply because I care more about the quality for my videos than anything else. I'll upload every 6 months if it means that every 6 months I release a really good video, and it means I don't really get a ton of... It just results in me not getting a ton of subscribers. So why would I deliberately make a section of the commentary that's purposely not good? And it's to perfectly illustrate my... I say perfect too much. I can almost guarantee you that a large portion of people that were watching the video likely clicked off the second I started talking real fast, and as it went on, considering it's an extended clip, more and more people clicked off. I did that deliberately knowing I will lose a lot of viewers, and it's to illustrate my point to the rest of you that are still watching the video, that the pacing of something is one of the most important parts of a video or TV show. If you nail down everything, the plot, the story, the animation, absolutely everything, but you screw up the pacing, well, guess what? It doesn't matter how good everything else is, because if the pacing is bad, no one's going to want to watch it. In the case of SAO, a lot of people... Stinking. Ruined everything. Let me move my... Seriously, screws everything up, that thing. The water gonna stop? Is that water going to stop? Oh my God. Okay, there we go. Now I could record again. I can almost guarantee you that a large portion of people who were watching the video likely clicked off the start... I can almost guarantee you that a large portion of people who were watching the video likely clicked off the second I started talking real fast, and I don't care that a lot of people clicked off. It demonstrates to the rest of you just how important pacing is. It's the best way I really could demonstrate it. I could take an hour making an entire video by using a lot of videos that I've made to demonstrate how the pacing of a video really makes the biggest difference in how good the video is, and it makes a massive impact on the feel of that video, but no one would watch that. Instead, I'd rather make this and intentionally screw up the pacing of it so that way I could demonstrate to you, hey, I'm going to lose a lot of viewers from that. And you know something, if you stick through that, congratulations. You probably thought that that section of commentary was pure garbage, and it was like that deliberately. Now let me show you how that actually looks in terms of an anime by cutting a scene from Excel World to match that of how the pacing in SAO is done. Seriously, can people stop making noise in this house? So annoying. This is why I usually record at 3 in the morning, but this is such a long commentary, it probably isn't viable to do it at 3 in the morning. Sorry for all the background noise. Okay, where was I? As you can see, there's a very clear, noticeable difference between... No, what am I saying? As you can see, comparing the three with... come on. As you can see, if you take the original scene, compare it to the cut scene, and then compare that to SAO, the pacing really does make a massive difference. And for that clip, I didn't just cut a lot of... come on. For that... come on. For that clip, I didn't just cut a lot of the pauses and sections like that. I also intentionally cut a lot of the inner monologues. And the reason for that is because of something I'll bring up later, where they just cut everything in the world building and inner monologues, which screws a lot of things up. I wanted to point that out, though, because you'll notice that, you know something, it really does... come on. As you can see by watching the original scene compared to the cutscene and then watching that to SAO, you'll see that it really does make a massive difference. And you'll also notice that I probably I'm going to. As you can see, comparing the original scene from Excel World to the cutscene that I cut and then to SAO, you'll notice how important the pacing really is and how the way I was able to cut it was able to really demonstrate how it is cut in a way to screw up a lot of aspects. But you'll also notice that a lot of the inner monologues were cut by me. And the reason for that is because SAO does the same thing. Later on, I'm going to... Come on. Give me a second. As you can see by the original version of the As you can see by the original version of the Excel World clip, the cut version that I cut, and SAO, that there's a very clear difference in terms of the pacing, and I also was able to... come on, no. As you can see, there's a very clear difference in terms of pacing between the three clips, the original in Excel World, the cut in Excel World, and SAO. And of the three, clearly the original in Excel World is better, but it's not just because of the pacing, it's also because of a lot of the cuts to the inner monologues and things like that, which I also decided to cut out of the Excel World clip. So because of that, I'm going to discuss that more later on, but I want to demonstrate that the pacing is one of the biggest issues with the SAO Season 3 adaptation as a whole, and the fact that they don't seem to really care about it is disgusting, and how no one even points this out is pretty massive in my opinion. Speaking of cuts, let's go on to number 2, which is the sheer amount of cuts. I can go on and on for literal hours on the sheer number of stuff cut from season 3, and not just season 3, seasons 1 and 2 as well, but I'm going to focus on season 3. No. Speaking of cut content, number 2 is the sheer amount of cut content from season 3, but not just season 3. Even seasons 1 and 2 had a significant amount of cut content. And while you think that cut content might... come on. Speaking of cuts, number 2 on this list is the sheer amount of cut content. And while a lot of people might not think that cutting content is that big a deal, I mean, it's the animator's job to create... Speaking of cut content, number 2 on this list is the sheer amount of cuts. And I've seen a lot of people argue that deciding to cut something is a decision of the director because the director chooses what makes it into the adaptation, and because the adaptation is much different from the source material, things will Speaking of cut content, number 2 on this list is the sheer amount of cuts. And I've seen people argue that because SAO as an anime is a different medium from the light novels, things will inevitably have to be cut and adjusted in order to fit the different medium. But the difference between adapting something for a creative reason and adapting something because you're just a god-awful director is very apparent in this case. Now, it's not just an issue with SAO Season 3, as there have been dozens upon dozens of cuts to the previous SAO seasons. Because of that, I want to go through just a small list of some of the significant things that were cut. Just a small list. This won't take very long, will it? Okay, so now I have to compile a list of things that were cut. Okay. Number 2, things that were cut. Do I seriously have 5 viewers right now? Nice. Awesome. Miko said, Ayo, I don't know if you remember me. I was your first giveaway winner. Wow, that's a long time ago. First giveaway. Do I even still have that video on my channel? Give me a second on that. I want to see if I still have that video on my channel even. Because that was years ago. Okay. That was years ago. Yeah, I love how with the new YouTube UI, you can't just... Oh, I could do different rows, but I still can't skip all the way to the end, which is so annoying. Okay. Yeah, there's no page numbers. That's really nice. Yeah, I've been doing YouTube for a very long time, as a lot of you guys can see. It was before this even, before this. The first giveaway I ever did was when I was doing Call of Duty content, a little bit before this. It was before my partnership with Freedom. Here, giveaway winner. I think this was it, maybe? I don't know if this video is public.
What's up, guys? I'm LIIIVE, and now it is the start of...
Absentee Squash 5 was my terrible name, but yeah, you sound different. I don't know. I saw the live stream. I guess I kept the sub after all these years. Yeah, my content these days is a lot different. I actually got pretty good at making, at editing, so... let me just see if this is the same giveaway. This is from 2013. Yeah, the video is set to private.
So the winner is Paquitav Jr., whoever that guy is. Now, here's how it works. If you...
In that case, I don't think you were the first giveaway winner. I'm pretty sure this was the first giveaway I did. Maybe like a second? I don't remember how many giveaways I did, but whatever. Anyways, right now I'm basically live streaming myself recording a video. So, yeah, if you want to sit back and watch, enjoy. So let's go over the things that were cut. This is just off the top of my head, by the way. So, Volume 1. Volume 1, what arcs were they? Volume 1. Screw it, let me just grab my light novels. Okay. Oh, I remember one already, actually. Okay. Volume 1. Guess not, I just remembered winning a gift card, haha. Yeah, back then I used to give away gift cards every now and then thinking it would up my subscriber numbers, but it's not actually as effective as you would think, believe it or not. 1 second, what is this? Okay, 1 second. Yeah, I'm just trying to find the thing in the light novel so that way I have the exact details. One second. From this point onward, you'll be furthermore. To be more specific, the brain frying sequence will commence upon any of the following circumstances. Okay. Details of what scenarios at which the nerve gear will fry one's brain, including 10 minutes of no external power, comma, 2 hours of network disconnection, comma, dismantling or destruction of the nerve gear. One second. One second. Volume 1, details of one scenario which the nerve gear fries the brain, including 10 minutes of no external power, 2 hours of network disconnection, dismantling or destruction of the nerve gear. This creates several plot holes at which one can argue that the entire SAO incident could have been avoided by unplugging the nerve gear so the battery runs out of power disconnecting it from Wi-Fi, so at least the player can't die until a solution is discovered, or straight up breaking the nerve gear instead of taking it off. Volume 1. What else is there in Volume 1? Volume 1. The fact that the boss room location for the first floor was actually moved by the developers. This makes it This creates a pothole where it's completely unexplained why it took 2 months to find it when the beta testers know where it would be thanks to the beta test. One second. Give me a second. Yeah, this is probably a boring stream for you guys. Sorry I haven't been saying much this whole time. I do enjoy the conversation, but I have a hard time making myself talk. It's totally fine, don't worry. Right now I'm just streaming myself doing the things I usually normally do when I record videos. So I'm not expecting much interaction. I'm more just giving you guys an insight into how I normally make my videos. Okay. Volume 2. Let's see. I know that I'm skipping a lot of plot holes for the anime. I'm only really just covering the significant ones. Volume 2. Actually, no, I'm going to put this somewhere else. because apparently in the light novel, the axe wielder in Rosalia's party in the episode with Pina and Silica, he only had one axe. Axe wielder, not others. L2P53. Warmth of the Heart. No, there's something significant in volume 1 actually. Diabel, I forgot about that. I think I passed it. $2,000 players died within a month, blah blah blah. Black Iron Palace. Wow, this thing just skips all over the place. Stuff with Curdeal. Where's the stuff with Diablo? That's the 474 stuff. What is this? Oh, Diablo. Oh, perfect. Okay, arms blasting. Volume 1. The fact that how Kirito cutting Curdeal's sword in half was not because he's some OP beta tester. Rather, he outsmarted Curdeal and used the game's mechanics to his advantage. This helps contribute to the incorrect idea that Kirito is a light novel wish fulfillment character who is OP because the plot demands it, when in reality he is an actual character who is as good at the game as he is, for reasons ironically largely omitted from the anime and would take so long to explain. It deserves its own dedicated video. Source on screen for how arms blasting works. Vol 1 78. And that's not the exact page. I'll have to narrow that down. That's just a reference point for me to come back to later. Where's the thing with Curd Deal? There's probably some stuff that with Yui that was cut. Volume 1. The power, importance, and frequency at which the army caused trouble and screwed things up for everyone. Also, the army proves socialism does not work. I'm just adding that in to piss people off, by the way. No, I'm going to take that out because it detracts from the overall point. This builds up the world and add some world building to, you know what, this isn't significant enough to include actually. Red-nosed reindeer. Sorry for the background noise. One second. Okay, I'm not reading the books in depth enough to really find a lot of these potholes. I'm really just skimming through them. Okay, I know the next one easily. The stuff with Tonki that was cut. Okay. How's the Sister's Prayer coming along? Delayed right now for various reasons. Reasons mostly being I don't know what I'm doing in my life. Yeah, that's a pretty accurate assessment. Screw it, why am I spending so much time on this? Hey, why am I spending so much time on this? Let me just cover the big thing. Which volume was Tonki again? 3 or 4? Probably 4. Volume 4. The complete cutting the entire introduction to Tonki, thus removing a ton of world building and making the entire Excalibur arc utterly pointless to adapt. Seriously, there was no reason to adapt that if they cut Tonki. Volume 4. Cutting the coffee shop scene where Rinko Kojiro explains to Kirito how she originally intended to kill Kayaba but decided against it, thus hinting towards there being some hidden reason why there being some reason why. No. Decided against it with the wording of the novel hinting that it may have had something to do with Kaiba's plan and how he did what and how he may have had a good reason. No. How he may have had a there may have been a reason. And how there's more to his plan than no. No. Was likely a reason he committed the SAO incident. Volume 5. Off the top of my head, I can't think of much. I remember there was a ton of cut stuff with GGO, but I can't think of too much. Off the top of my head, at least. Let's just skip to Volume 8. Wait, no. No, Volume 7. Yugi was unfairly discriminated against by her peers due to her illness. to the point she was forced to move comma her sister. No, was that in the novel? I don't know. That was in Sister's Prayer, but I don't remember if it was explicitly said in Volume 7. Comma, the details of how bad her condition was, including how she sustained brain damage as a result of the virus, and by the time Asuna met her in person, she was no longer able to move her physical body on her own anymore. What else was there? There was a ton of cuts with Mother's Rosario. The thing with Kirito versus Yuki is, where would that go? Lack of care by A1. Rosario, Kirito versus Yuki 2. As she was unable to move her physical body on her own anymore. Comma, what else was there? How the sleeping nights as a group were so unbelievably OP that the various factions attempted to recruit them, and a deal wasn't reached, with the understanding being that they are so busted that if they were to join any single faction, it would destroy the entire balance, the entire geopolitical balance. Comma, how each individual member of the Sleeping Knights, aside for Yuki, is on par with Asuna in terms of raw power, and that they simply lack the game knowledge to be able to surpass her. What else was there? There was a ton more. How Kirito was never able to develop information on Kirito and Asuna's attempts to create an OSS. I know the story for Mother Zario much better than all the other ones just because of how many times I've watched it, hence why this one is so much more detailed. Much more. Nah, I don't need to put that. Volume 8. The entire story of the murder in a safe zone sub-arc was so fundamentally butchered. It's comparable with Alicization. For one, let me grab the volume. For one, Schmidt, the original suspect, actually attempted to steal the murder weapon, thus adding to his suspicion. There's the fact that Kirito and Asuna literally confronted and questioned Heathcliff, aka Kayaba, aka the creator of the game, on how certain specific game and mechanics work, since he was rumored to have a lot of knowledge on the game. This gives a added reason why Kirito would suspect him in the final confrontation of the arc, and was completely cut. There's an entire scene showing Kiri and Asuna. Wait, no, did it show that? Or did they say it? They discussed with him how whether certain scenarios could have resulted in the murder in a very interesting way that would expand the world of the series and add to the intrigue, and was completely cut for no reason. This includes questions such as whether if an individual started taking damage outside a safe zone and came in, would they continue taking damage, whether poison or status effects could cause someone to die in a safe zone, and dozens of other scenarios. They cut an entire scene where Kirito and Asuna stake out a restaurant where a potential suspect was rumored to go. They basically cut 85% of the arc. They also cut a ridiculous amount of other scenes that explained how the murder was solved for absolutely no reason. This one sub-arc could have taken 6 episodes on its own if it was adapted properly. What else was there? Volume 8. They cut an entire sub-arc where Kirito was first left the town of beginnings and was ambushed by another player. Volume, what was it? 10 or 11, I think? 10. They cut the entire Zakaria sub-arc, which gives nearly all of Charlotte's development. Volume 10. They cut 95% of the investigation into Kazuto's whereabouts in favor of having Yuna's song cameo in the background for 4 seconds. They also changed the plot so bad. They also changed various aspects of the investigation, resulting in a massive plot hole I have addressed in previous videos and will address later. Volume 15. They cut the entire stinking end goal for Gabriel, along with half of his backstory. I have an entire section on this later. Volume 13, I think? 12, 13, I don't know. They cut like 95% of Cardinal's backstory and nearly all the plot, nearly all the world building. Okay, I'm ready to record this thing.
The adaptation, and because the adaptation is much different from the source material, things will Speaking of just a small list of some of the significant things that were cut. Just a small list. This won't take very long, will it?
Okay. Okay, I spent like 2 hours compiling the list. This is actually a small list. This is far from everything. Like, far, far from everything. I can go on for days researching this. I can go on for days just explaining all the cuts. I tried to stick to a lot of what I feel are the more significant cuts and avoid some of the less significant stuff. But here we go. This is going to take like 10 minutes. Volume 1, details of what scenarios at which the nerve gear will fry one's brain, including 10 minutes of no external power, 2 hours of no network connection, dismantling or destruction of the nerve gear. This creates several plot holes at which one can argue the entire SAO incident could have been avoided by unplugging the nerve gear so that way the battery runs out of power, disconnecting it from Wi-Fi so at least the players can't die until a solution is discovered, or straight up breaking the nerve gear instead of taking it off. Volume 1, the fact that the boss room location from the first floor was actually moved by the developers. This creates a plot hole where it's completely unexplained why it took 2 months to find it when the beta testers know exactly where it is thanks to the beta tester. Volume 1, how Kirito cutting Kuradil's sword in half was not because he's some OP beta tester, rather he outsmarted Kuradil and used the game's mechanics to his advantage. This helps contribute to the incorrect idea that Kirito is some light novel wish fulfillment character who's OP because the plot demands it, when in reality he is an actual character who's good at the game for reasons ironically largely omitted from the anime, and it would take so long to explain it deserves its own dedicated video. Source on screen for how arms blasting works, by the way. Volume 4, I could go through volumes 2 and 3, but I'm like, let me just skip to 4 because I remember some of the stuff from there that were more significant. But there are lots of significant things from 1 and 3 and from basically every volume. I just remember it more from 4. Cutting the entire introduction to Tonki, thus removing a ton of world building and making the entire Excalibur arc utterly pointless to adapt. Volume 4, cutting the coffee shop scene where Rinko Kojiro explains to Kirito how she originally intended to kill Kaiba but decided against it, with the wording of the novel hinting that it may have had something to do with Kaiba's plan and how there was likely a reason he committed the SAO incident. While it's hinted that there is a reason in the anime, it doesn't give a lot of the rationales. It really is just that Kirito's like, oh, I know he had a master plan, but there's no real evidence behind it in the anime because most of it was actually cut. I'm only going over this, but there's a lot more stuff in the novels that are really more hint based, that they bring up Kaiba's name every now and then, or through the game's mechanics in SAO and through different appearances of his, that it hints a lot better at it, and that they actually it's actually in the light novel, but it's not in the anime because they cut it. Volume 7, get ready for this. Yuki was unfairly discriminated against by her peers due to her illness to the point she was forced to move. The details of how bad her condition was, including how she sustained brain damage as a result of the virus, and by the time Asuna met her in person, she was no longer able to move her physical body on her own anymore. How the Sleeping Knights as a group were so unbelievably OP that the various factions attempted to recruit them, with the understanding being that they're so busted that if they were to join any singular faction, it would destroy the entire geopolitical game balance. How each individual member of the Sleeping Knights, aside from Yuki, is on par with Asuna in terms of raw power, and that they simply lack the game knowledge in order to be able to surpass her. And also information on Kirito and Asuna's attempts at creating an OSS. Volume 8. The entire story of the Murder in a Safe Zone sub-arc was so fundamentally butchered, it's comparable with Alicization and how bad it was. For one, Schmidt, one of the original suspects, attempted to steal the murder weapon, thus adding to his suspicion. This was completely cut from the anime. There's also the fact that Kirito and Asuna literally confronted and questioned Heathcliff, aka Kayaba, aka the creator of the game, on how specific game mechanics worked, since he was rumored to have a lot of knowledge on the game. This gives an added reason why Kirito would suspect him in the final confrontation of the arc, and was completely cut. They discussed with him whether certain scenarios could have resulted in the murder in this very specific, in a very interesting way that could have expanded the world of the series and added to the intrigue, and was completely cut for some reason. This includes questions such as whether if an individual starts taking damage outside a safe zone and came into one, whether they would continue taking damage, whether poison and status effects could change that, whether or not fall damage and other damage types would be able to affect that, whether or not the height of the safe zone would be affected. So for example, if you're above the ground, could you not be in the safe zone, and dozens of other possible scenarios, and they even tested some of the things. They also cut a ridiculous amount of other scenes that explained how the murder was solved. This includes stuff like Kirito and Asuna staking out a restaurant thinking that the murderer might have been there, and dozens of other scenes that I just don't remember off the top of my head, and I didn't write it in the script here. This one sub-arc could have taken 6 episodes on its own if it was adapted properly, yet they took up 2 and butchered the entire thing. Volume 8, they cut the entire sub-arc where Kirito left the first left the town of beginnings and was ambushed by another player. Volume 10, they cut the entire Zakaria sub-arc, which gives nearly all of Charlotte's development, yet they kept Charlotte in for some reason. Volume 10, they cut 95% of the investigation into Kazuto's whereabouts in favor of having a single song cameo in the background for 4 seconds. They also changed various aspects of the investigation, resulting in a massive plot hole I've addressed in previous videos and I'll address later on in this video. Volume 13, they cut like 95% of Cardinal's backstory, nearly all the world building. Volume 15, they cut an entire end goal for Gabriel along with half of his backstory. I have an entire section of this later. This is just some of the things that were cut. Not everything. I have an entire hour 40-minute video explaining one episode from season 3 of cuts. Just one episode. The sheer amount of things that were cut is absolutely disgusting, and that's one reason why I'm going to be boycotting any future SAO anime. Number 3 on this list, the sheer amount of care... Number 3 on this list, the sheer lack of care by A1 on every front. The problem with A1 is that they really just do not care about adapting the series faithfully in any way, shape, or form. What they realize is that the SAO name is such... Oh my god. Okay, 1 second. Number 3, the sheer lack of care by A1. A1, I guess, realizes that the SAO name is so big that simply making anything SAO related will make money regardless of how good or bad the end result is. Either that, or they realize that the damage to the series' reputation thanks to their past adaptation is so damaged that even if they do screw it up, it doesn't really matter since SAO faithfuls will watch it regardless. Well, I'm not watching it anymore after everything that's happened. This is just number 3 on a list of 16. I could probably go further if I really wanted to. A great demonstration of the sheer lack of care by A1 is the Mother's Rosario fight of Kirito versus Yuki at the end of Volume 7. In the anime version of the fight, it shows that Kirito only lost due to the time limit, when in reality, the light novel explicitly said that it was an extended, drawn-out battle where both Kirito and Yuki used nearly all of their sword skills, but Yuki won without issue, and that was a very, very drawn-out and really crazy fight. This was not some, oh, Yuki just won by the skin of her teeth and she would have lost if it wasn't for the time limit. No, this blatantly goes against the exact wording of the light novel. Not only that, it goes against character statements, author statements, and everything else. They just didn't care. They thought, oh, you know something? Kirito is the main character. He must be OP because... I don't know, they're really dumb. And they're like, hey, let's make it that the only reason Yuki won is not because of the fact that she's more skilled than Kirito in every way, rather because of the fact that there's a time limit, when there was nothing about that stated in any way in the light novel. And when the character statements explicitly say, including Kirito himself, that Yuki is stronger, when the author explicitly said on every single occasion it was brought up that Yuki is stronger and that Kirito has basically no shot at winning, especially if it's Kirito with 2 swords against Yuki with 1 sword, he'd still lose, let alone them both with 1 sword. And anyone just decides, hey, you know something, let's have it like this. There's also the fact that they even decided to adapt the the Excalibur arc, when the only thing it adds, realistically, it adds some world building, which is honestly not specifically needed, but they cut the entire thing with Tonki, making it utterly pointless to adapt it to begin with. They showed the entire Tonki sub-arc through a flashback that took less than a minute to explain, thus completely negating any reason to include this arc to begin with. The only thing that carries over from this arc is the fact that Kirito got Excalibur. If they could show the entire build up to this arc in a flashback, I'm sure they could show Kirito getting Excalibur in a flashback. What could they have used those 3 episodes for? Literally anything else. They could have used one of those 3 episodes to go over most of those plot holes I discussed for Volume 7. They don't even need a full episode. Half an episode for that would be fine. They could then use the other 2 for GGO, which had a ton of other cuts, which there was too many for me to really go over, and I don't want to spend 5 hours researching this thing for a dumb video like this. There's just so much things cut from GGO. It's ridiculous. Those 2 episodes would have gone great for GGO, but no, they decided to adapt Excalibur for absolutely no reason. They don't. The fact that they put Ono as the director really shows how little they care about the adaptation. I don't know why they thought this moron was qualified to do the job. The second they announced this moron was the guy that was going to be directing it, I actually originally recorded a video of me yelling, "This guy is not qualified to do this based off his past track record." I didn't upload it, but I still have the commentary. I mean, seriously, like, why? Is it because he's the cheapest person to do the job? I mean, it sure shows that's the case. Number 4, the missed potential. Let's compare SAO to Excel World. SAO has one of the most awful adaptations I've ever seen. Easy, not even close. Compare that to... No, come on. Number 4 on this list, the sheer amount of missed potential. 95% of all the issues that people that don't like SAO bring up are addressed in the light novels. People would love this series if it had a good adaptation, but no, it has a garbage adaptation. Does it have its flaws? 100%. SAO is far from flawless. Even Excel World is far from flawless, and honestly, I legitimately feel Excel World is a fundamentally better written story than SAO. But 95% of the issues that people have with SAO as a series are not an issue in the light novel. They screwed it up so bad that it became an issue. Let's look at how come on now. Number 4 on the list, the missed potential. Let's compare SAO to Excel World again, because both of them are written by the same author, but one of them got a phenomenal adaptation that's nearly perfect. And I'd actually say the adaptation for Excel World is better than the light novels. Compare that to SAO, which has such a garbage adaptation. I'd argue is one of the worst adaptations I've ever seen, or at least that I've read the source material for, so that way I could compare the two. So let's look at SAO. Come on now. Number 4 on my list, the sheer amount of missed potential. Number 4 on my list, the sheer amount of missed potential. SAO has the most garbage adaptation I've ever seen, or at least the most garbage adaptation that I've read the source material for that I could compare the two. Compare that with Excel World, written by the same author but adapted by a better studio and a better director. Studio Sunrise, I don't know the director off the top of my head. The same studio that makes Gundam, Love Live, and a couple other series. They actually cared about making a good adaptation. As a result, not only did the director do such a phenomenal job that they were able to adapt nearly every single aspect of the actual light novels, including all of the world building, barring some tiny details that weren't even important. They were also able to add 2 full episodes of of anime original filler that were not from the light novels. There was 2 episodes. Oh, come on, no, I'm screwing it up. Number 4 on my list, the sheer amount of missed potential with the adaptation. Let's compare SAO with Excel World again, since both of them are written by the same author, but one of them has an amazing adaptation while one of them has a garbage adaptation. SAO is so awfully adapted that people... come on, no. Number 4 on my list, let's compare... Number 4 on Number 4 on my list, the missed potential. Let's compare SAO to Excel World again, since both of them are written by the same author, but one of them has a phenomenal adaptation while the other one is garbage. 95% of the issues that people have with the SAO are due strictly to its adaptation and are fundamentally not issues in the light novel. SAO has its issues. There's a lot of things that could be explained better. There's a lot of scenes that honestly were just boring in the light novels, and specifically a lot of the fight scenes, at least in my opinion, in the light novel were just flat out boring. Let's compare that to Excel World, though, where honestly it's the same thing. That there's a lot of missed potential and a lot of issues, but it's a... come on now. Number 4 on my list, the sheer amount of missed potential. Let's compare SAO to Excel World again, because they're both written by the same author, yet one of them has a phenomenal adaptation while the other one is pure trash. SAO, most of the issues that people have with it are strictly stem from the adaptation and are not due to the light novel. No, most of these issues are not issues in the light novel. Does it have its issues? 100%. It's not perfect. There's a lot of problems that even I have with it. But the difference between SAO and Excel World is that the Excel World adaptation is near perfect. They adapted all of the important stuff. They adapted all of the world building, the inner monologues, and everything. There's only a choice amount of really small things that were cut and things that weren't strictly needed anyways in order to get the point across. Off the top of my head, the only thing I can even remember that was cut, the only thing off the top of my head, was a tiny scene where that was slightly changed, where Haru was trying to increase his reaction time by getting shot by a gun in an invisible room. Some of the details on why he was getting shot with the gun, why he was training the way he was, and some of the details of how he was doing the training were cut, along with a really interesting tidbit that originally he planned on having it be like a noir-like scene with a blacked out detective shooting the gun, but he wasn't able to do that because it was too hard for him to pull off. But something like that doesn't really add enough to it that it really makes much of a difference that was cut. And that's the only thing off the top of my head that I could think of that was cut. Otherwise, not only was it a perfect adaptation, it was so perfect that the director actually had 2 additional episodes to play with to add an anime original filler sub-arc that not only worked well with the existing story, it actually fits it with it very well. Basically, halfway through the show, Kuruyuki Hime leaves on vacation somewhere with the school as a trip, and what she does on that vacation is not covered in any way in the light novel. The director had 2 extra episodes to play around with, covering the same amount of light novels as the SAO adaptation, and was somehow able to have 2 leftover episodes in order to do this. Compare that to SAO, which covers the same amount of material on average, especially for seasons 1 and 2. Usually each arc, each 12 to 14 episodes, covers 2 books. And not only were they not able to cover everything, they weren't even able to cover a tenth of not a tenth, they covered maybe 60 to 70% of everything at best. They cut all the inner monologues, they cut a ton of the world building, they cut entire massive world building scenes, and with the Murder in a Safe Zone sub arc, they cut basically the entire arc. In fact, they cut entire arcs even. They cut Zakaria, they cut the Tonki thing, they cut a thing with the army when Kirito and Asuna were trying to go somewhere in Volume 1. There's so much things that were cut where it's really down to the director not knowing what he's doing and not being able to fit enough into it. That's a sign of a good director. A good director is able to fit everything into the scene well enough so that way they have enough time to do everything. They know how to pace everything well. Goes back to the first point. They know how to pace everything well, so that way they have enough time to get to everything. But no, Ono and Manabu Ono and whoever the previous moron was, they're both incompetent buffoons. Number 5, the world building. I brought this up several times, but when you cut nearly all the world building from your adaptation, what's the point in not watching it? You can't theory craft anything by this point because all the explanations is only in the light novel and you can't do it off the anime. That creates a bunch of fights. You can't really get hooked nearly as easily when all the information on how this world works is completely missing. All the intrigue is just completely gone. All the geopolitical stuff with how the Alfheim factions work, all of the stat related stuff in the original SAO arc of how the swords are able to be upgraded and how the stat systems work in that. Nearly everything is basically cut. Why? Because the director's a moron. Number 6 on my list. By the time Alicization started airing, each episode progressively just pissed me off more and more as I continued watching it. When I first read so I got into anime through SAO, so I watched the anime before I read the bulk of the light novels. After I watched the anime like 2 or 3 times and like a year after, I decided to read the light novels. I'm like, wow, they screwed this up. I ended up reading Alicization, and the second I start reading this thing, I'm like, oh my god, this is phenomenal. This is an utter masterpiece. I was completely hooked in its setting, in its world, and everything. I was able to clearly visualize everything. I was so hooked that it was unbelievable. Now, what ends up happening instead? Sorry if my dog's barking in the background. I'm not restarting this commentary again. Number 6 on my list, how each and every episode starting from Alicization and on just progressively pissed me off. And sorry for background noise, I need to get this commentary done by this point. I got into anime through SAO. I watched SAO, I got really, really hooked. Eventually I read the light novels in order to research a theory of mine I had on Kaiba's master plan, and I started reading Alicization. And by the time I started reading Alicization, I was so hooked on it. It's unbelievable. I love the arc. But to this day, Volume 10 is one of my favorite volumes of SAO, period. I actually like, in terms of the light novel, I feel like Volume 10 is actually better than Volume 7, in my opinion, which is massive if you know how much I love the Mother's Rosario arc. Because Volume 10 introduced this idea with Kaiba and Rinko, and it went through everything with Kaiba's master plan, and I'm like, this is exactly why I started reading the light novels. I want all this information. 90% of it was either cut or butchered. And that wasn't the start of it. I mean, that was the point where I'm like, I'm just pissed off. But before that, I'm noticing that there's a lot of smaller things that were cut. Episodes 1 through 4 weren't that bad, honestly, of Alicization. But everything after episode 4, I want to vomit. And as I continued watching the show, it progressively just pissed me off more and more to see scenes that I absolutely fell in love with get butchered and unbelievably destroyed by rushing them and just not even not caring one bit about them. It's very clear for several reasons why they just don't care about this thing, and it just pissed me off. At a certain point, I just don't want to watch it anymore, and at a certain point, I was forcing myself to watch it, not because I wanted to, but because really, I was just forcing myself to do so. And by this point, I'm like, why would I continue watching it if every time I watch it, I'm not being entertained? It's just upsetting me. So, yeah. Number 7, Gabriel. Period. Every single aspect of him with the anime. Period. 2 simple things specifically with him. They cut the entire reason why he is doing everything. Like, what? You don't even know what his end goal is in the adaptation thus far. And by the way that it's been shown, I don't think they're even going to say what it is. What's his goal, in case you're curious? He specifically wants to steal Alice's Fluctlight because he wants to take it. He's gonna he's gonna go all the way to Australia and claim that the mission failed, but he stole her Fluctlight. Then what he's gonna do is that he's gonna replicate an STL in the basement of a mansion that he's gonna get, and he's gonna kidnap girls off the street of Sydney, Australia, and bring them into the STL in order to endlessly murder them forever and ever. And because it's in an accelerated state, it really can go on forever. That's the TLDR version of what his end goal is, and it's a lot more screwed up and detailed in the light novel. But absolutely none of that was mentioned in the anime. I have two theories as to why. Three theories. One, A1's incompetence, that they didn't think something like, oh, I don't know, what the villain is trying to do is important. Two, they didn't have the balls to show it because of how screwed up it is. Or three, the fact that they just felt that, I don't know, I can't think of a reason. It's such a vital thing. Like, why does the villain want to kidnap Alice? Okay, maybe you understand that he wants to kidnap her because she looks like Alicia. Maybe you can understand that, but what's he gonna do with her? What is he gonna do with her? Never explained. Never ever explained. Why? Because A1 just doesn't care. Oh yeah, also they cut nearly all the information of his backstory. Nearly all of it. They showed a small amount of it, but they cut basically all the details, including how he grew up in a rich family, how Alicia was also in a rich family, but how the financial crisis of 2008 utterly wrecked them, but Gabriel's family was able to weather it out while Alicia's family was not, and how Alicia was going to move because of that, and the reason that Gabriel decided to kill her was because of that, how Gabriel was experimenting with bugs by killing them, trying to find their souls, and then realized that no matter where he kills them, different bugs were able to survive no matter where you kill them, really, depending on certain situations. So as a result, you can't really determine where their soul is, and because of that, he thought that only really humans have souls, and he wanted to see what would happen if he killed a person. And once he killed Alicia, what happened? There's so much cut. I know some of that was shown in the anime, but it was not shown nearly to the extent and to the detail it should have been. Number 8, the art style switch. This is a very personal one for me. So if you disagree, screw you in my video. I don't like the art style switch. So from the original SAO's 2 seasons, it had a certain art style. I really like it. It's really simplistic. It's really nice. Because it's simplistic, it's really, really easy to draw it that way. There wasn't a lot of issues with the first art style because guess what? It's really nice and easy to make. Ordinal scale, because it's a movie, they have a movie budget. So they upgrade the character models. They upgrade the general overall aesthetic. They add a ton of shadows. They add a ton of detail. They make it look really, really nice. As a result, because it's a movie with a movie budget, it looks really, really cool and nice. Well, what happens when you take those movie animation art styles, you take that movie design, that movie aesthetic, and you transfer it back over to a TV budget? Not only do you transfer it over to a TV budget, you slash the budget, give half the episodes needed, and decide that who cares because you're gonna make money anyways. Well, you get frames like this, where for a literal half a second, as I will play the full clip on screen, as you can see here, and I will repeat it several times so that way you can visibly see where this frame happens. This is not like an issue where I'm going frame by frame in order to find it. You can actually pause the video right now, and odds are you will be able to get it on this exact frame, and it's very noticeable. That's not the only animation issue, that's just the most easy to point out. I also just don't like the general new art style. The original looked really good. I really like the original. The new one, it looks like they're just trying to be Fate. SAO, you are not Fate. A1, you wish you were Ufotable. You wish you could animate 1/10 as good as them. But no, you can't, because you're A1. Yes, they have some really good shows with really good animation, which I'll get into later, like 7 Deadly Sins. But the thing is, though, they don't give the kind of budget to SAO that they do to Seven Deadly Sins for absolutely no reason. Number 9, the animation quality. Look at this frame. That's all I need to say. Number 9, the animation quality. Look at this frame. This made it into the final product. This actually made it into the... This isn't like a Madoka Maguka thing where in the background the characters don't have faces or are very blurry. No, that's reasonable because they're in the background, they're blurry, and all anime do that. No. This is like her hand is 8 feet above her forehead in midair, and there's literally random sparks everywhere for absolutely no reason. I could also bring up other examples. I'm just way too lazy to look too deep into it because this video is going to take forever to make at this rate. So here's my proof. You could watch the show in depth, and if you look for it, you'll find a ton of other examples. And even if you're not looking for it, you'll probably see that the animation is lazy at best, partially because it's over-detailed because the art style switch. Anyways, that's the end of that point. Number 10, for every reason prior, and that will be mentioned later on, Ono is a moron who wouldn't be qualified as an in-between animator, as you can see literally here by the fact that this was approved, let alone as the director. His decisions thus far have been utterly baffling, including the cutting of Charlotte for the entire Zakaria arc and all of Charlotte's development, but instead choosing to keep her in the arc. Like, if you're gonna choose to cut an entire sub-arc, giving all the development to one of the characters and to the entire group of the nobles, then at least have the balls to cut the consequences of cutting that. If you're gonna cut Charlotte! She's not that plot vital that you can't adjust the plot in order to adapt for her not in there. And that screen time could have gone to better developing other things. If they completely cut the Zakaria, but also cut Charlotte, I wouldn't have been pissed. Because it shows that, you know something? Maybe either this director isn't skilled enough to properly use the time to do everything, or even if he is skilled enough to do it, he just felt he didn't have enough time to really put in everything. So at least if he's gonna cut something, he knows what the consequences of cutting that is and adapts the story to better fit to that. But nope, this guy's a moron. Also, there's a ton of other things that he could have done, a good director would have done, and he didn't. Great example of this is the fact that we do know, because it was retconned in the light novel, that Charlotte joined Kirito and Yugo as soon as they left Ruled Village. A great scene could have been that as soon as Kirito is going to get the top of the branch to get his sword, which, by the way, they cut that what would have happened is you see a little tiny spider jump from one of the branches right onto Kirito and lodge itself onto him. That would have been amazing. That would have actually made it surpass the light novels, because in the light novels they retconned Charlotte in. But if they were to do that in the anime, it would completely explain how Charlotte got on Kirito's clothes in order to later on get there. And it would add some intrigue because we don't know what this little thing that jumped onto Kirito is. But nope, not only do they completely not do something that should be obvious like that, or at least at any point showing Charlotte jump onto Kirito, at any point, no. What do? They decide, hey, let's not just cut that. Let's not just go the extra mile to do that. Let's entirely cut Kirito getting his sword. You morons! You utter morons! Point 11, A1's lack of balls to push the boundaries. Two specific examples for this, both relating to alicization. The first one... Point 11, A1's lack of balls to push the boundaries. Two specific examples for this. Point one is how they actually ended up censoring the blood in episode 10. I mean, if they want to put a warning label in the start of the episode because of how graphic that episode was, I can understand that. And in all fairness, for months prior to that episode airing, I predicted that they were going to completely change the contents of the episode because of how graphic the content was. At the very least, they had the balls to animate it. But they didn't have the balls to do it uncensored. I'm not even asking for them to, like, show what Ratios and Humbert actually did to them. No. I'm literally just saying, don't censor the blood! Like, seriously. They literally just put the black bar on screen. They also did that for when Kirito fought Ugochi, or whatever the guy's name is, the Lizard Killer, the Goblin in episode 4. The second Kirito cut his head off, the mountain of spewing blood. No, there's a censor bar over that. Like, why? Look at what every other series gets away with. You don't even have the balls to put a little bit of blood? Why? Not only that, if they really wanted to push the boundaries, you know what they could have done? The light novel explicitly describes that Quinella, administrator, whatever you want to call her, that she goes around naked because of the fact that she doesn't care what inferior life forms think of her. Look at what we got with interspecies reviewers. Look at how far they pushed the boundaries. They really pushed the boundaries, showing you can get away with stuff like that. In fact, anime has been showing tits on screen uncensored for decades. They don't do that. They could have done that, but they don't. In fact, in the ordinal scale Blu-ray release, when they show Asuna in the tub, for the Blu-ray cut, they actually showed Asuna's thing. Like, they could have done that, but no. They want to play it safe. They don't want to push the boundaries. If the entire adaptation was perfect, not even perfect, if it was even 10% better than what we got, even 10%, because that's how bad it is, that 10% would make a massive difference. If it was 10% better and they decide not to push the boundaries with these, I don't mind. I don't mind, honestly. Because you know what? Why take risks if you don't have to? But it's the fact that they don't even care for the basics, but they also don't care to push the boundaries. They just don't care. That's the problem here. Point number 12. What the actual is going on with the OS integration, because literally nothing happened so far. At the end of Ordinal Scale, they hinted that the guy that did the whole mess in Ordinal Scale, I don't remember the guy's name, but the guy that did that he is involved in Project Alicization. Not only that, in the scene that he probably should have shown up, or at least hinted to have been a part of the project, they didn't change anything. It goes back to that point I made that A1 doesn't have the balls to do anything. That if they cut something, they don't have the balls to adjust the plot in order to do anything. If you're going to add something in, you need to add it in. At one point in the light novel, Kikuoka mentioned that there's one other person that wasn't with them at the time when he was speaking to Asuna, and that they'll meet that person later. Well, in this case, shouldn't he have said that there's two people? I wonder if you are going to add that guy in because of a post-credits scene that explicitly showed that he's joining Project Alicization, maybe mention that he's there? Or maybe do something? I mean, honestly, you'll see my next point, but really, they did nothing aside from the dumb Yuna cameo thus far with Ordinal Scale, which makes just no sense. Point number 13. I'm going to complain both ways. What is going on with the Ordinal Scale integration? And I don't want Ordinal Scale integration. If you're going to put Ordinal Scale... Number 13, I'm going to get both ways with this. I don't want Ordinal Scale integration... Number 13, I said before, what in the world is going on with it because they didn't do anything with it yet. Number 13, I don't want them to do anything with it. They're clearly going to with this upcoming next quarter of the arc, but I don't want them to. Why? Because they've shown blatant incompetence with adapting what's already there, let alone being able to add anything. They weren't even able to properly make it so that way the guy that clearly joined Project Wrath even did anything. And Kikuoka literally never mentioned him, even though we know in the anime he's supposed to be there. Please, please, I really genuinely hope they do nothing with it. I mean, it's not like I'm going to watch it anyways. I'm not watching it. I'm boycotting it. But please, don't do anything with it. Leave that little cameo and just have it be that that's like the teaser for SAO Season 3 to get people hyped, and that you don't actually do anything with the ordinal scale stuff. Please do that. Because you know what you do with that in that case? You actually have the time to properly adapt everything that's actually supposed to be adapted. Number 14, the sheer amount of damage A1 has done to the series as a result of everything mentioned prior and the stuff coming up. Where to start? Well, clearly it's not just A1's fault. I mean, there's Digibro and Mother's Basement, who both have caused a lot of damage to the series. Mother's Basement more so because he actively went out of his way to lie about the series. He has apologized to about how he misconstrued a lot of the arguments in a more recent video, but it still doesn't change the fact that he did cause a lot of damage to the series. But if they made a proper adaptation to begin with, he wouldn't have been able to cause that damage, or at least not nearly to the extent that he was able to. Mother's Basement is a grifter. That's exactly what he is. He's out there to make as much money as he can off of his videos. And honestly, I can't blame him. Because guess what? People need money to make a living in order to survive. And if that's how he makes the majority of his money in order to live, I'm not going to blame him for that. What I will blame him for is how he did originally lie. But I can't take that. But I won't really blame him as much anymore because he did apologize for that. My point remains, though, that A1 is the one that made the adaptation. They're the ones that cut all the world building and all the character development from the original light novels that allowed Mother's Basement to create these lies in the first place and allowed Digibro to bring up what I don't remember his videos. I haven't watched them in years, but I remember he did make a few legitimate arguments at the very least. I don't remember how much of Digibro's stuff was true though. I haven't rewatched his SAO videos in years. But my point remains, again, A1 is the one that caused this by screwing up the adaptation to begin with this bad. Number 15, the plot holes. And wow, there's a lot of them. I'm only going to go over a few. A1 is so bad at adapting this thing that any change they make usually results in them actually adding in a plot hole. Two examples off the top of my head. Point number 15, the plot holes that A1 causes with their anime original garbage. Oh my god, where to start with this? There's so many plot holes that they actively add in by either cutting content, adding content that no one wanted and everyone wants them to just adapt what's there, or just changing things for absolutely no reason. Two very easy low-hanging fruit examples. First, there's the episode with Silica in Season 1, where there's a guy dual-wielding axes, even though a massive part of the series lore is that only Kirito in SAO would be able to dual-wield because he has the fastest reaction time, yet this guy is dual-wielding axes. And by the way, yes, this is anime original. You can see in Volume 2 that there's no mention of him dual-wielding axes. Number 2, the second example, is a lot bigger of a problem. In addition to all the plot holes I mentioned earlier in point number 2, there's the fact that A1 decided to change the entire investigation for how they figured out where Kirito was in the for where Kirito was, and also the details thereafter in the Alicization arc.
and as a result created a massive plot hole that completely causes a ton of issues. I'm sorry, I've been recording for like 3 hours straight, so I'm getting tired and stuttering a lot. TLDR of what happened. In the original light novel, there's a very thorough investigation that's written in a certain way that you could actually predict what will happen and where Kirito actually is. They don't give enough information for you to really get it right, but they give you enough information that you could really theorize about it and think it through in order to try and come up with the answer. And it's actually a lot of fun because of that. It was really entertaining to read, honestly. They cut all of that for some reason. Not only that, the worst part is that afterwards, when Asuna is discussing with Kikuoka all this classified information, what they ended up doing, for whatever reason, is cutting between that and Asuna discussing with her friends over ALO all this top secret classified information. What's the problem with this? Well, for one, there's the fact that Kikuoka specifically had everyone working on this project on the ocean turtle in the middle of the stinking ocean, specifically so that way there's no cell phone service. Why? So that way he could regulate any kind of outside contact. Why? So that way there's no leak for a classified project. Now explain to me how in God's name Asuna is even able to communicate with her friends over ALO to begin with, when either there is no internet or any internet that there is heavily regulated specifically by the system administrators to ensure that there's no leaks. I'm waiting. Second off, there was multiple metal detector scans on the way in, and I didn't see Asuna hiding an atmosphere up her butt. So question, where'd she get the atmosphere in order to talk to her friends? I'm waiting. Third, that would mean that Kikuoka had an atmosphere on board, which is possible, I'd say, but that he explicitly gave it to Asuna for whatever reason, even though she's a stowaway, she tricked her way on board and she's not supposed to be there. Okay. And then on top of all of that, and keep in mind, they confiscate your cell phones right before you get in and do everything in their power to make sure that there's no leaks. Okay, fine, whatever. But not only did he give her the atmosphere, not only did he allow her to use it, he allowed her to download ALO onto the thing, and then go on to ALO, a public game, to discuss with her friends online in a game that keeps logs of its chats, presumably, about this top secret classified information in a scenario at which they took every precaution to make sure that doesn't happen. Explain to me why in God's name he would ever do that. Not only that, Asuna specifically originally decided not to involve Liz and Silica because she had no reason to involve them and make them worry. They specifically get introduced later on when things get really, really bad. The only people originally involved with the investigation of what happened to Kazuta was Asuna because she is his girlfriend, LIIIVE because she is his cousin, and Xenon because she was involved with the death gun incident and they needed her analytical mind both in regards to how Death Gun could have done all of that, as well as because she's very level-headed and can think things through a lot better. That's why they explicitly excluded Lisbeth and Silica, and it's a large reason why they are in ALO trying to deal with the incident instead of in the underworld trying to help Kirito and Asuna. The reason is because they only just became aware of the basic details of what's going on very quickly as stuff really started going nuts and they couldn't get a full explanation. So they got a semi kind of explanation, and the people that are more involved in everything, Xenon and Xenon Lisbeth, Xenon, LIIIVE, and Asuna, because they know a lot more and because they are fundamentally better fighters, they joined the underworld in order to help Kirito. There's so many plot holes. There's just so many issues with this. No wonder why there was a leak if Kikuoka is literally going to do that. What's the point of all these security measures if you're going to do that? Oh my god, my god. And this is completely avoidable. This could have been completely avoidable. All they had to do is not adapt the scene like that. All they had to do is follow the light novel. Oh my god. And there's so many other scenes as well. That's just one example. And number 16, the last thing on this list. I'm going to get a lot of flack for this for what little people are still watching this video. Kirito's blue sword. That's it. Kirito's blue sword. Why does this piss me off the most? That it tops my list. Well, I guess I'm going 1 to 16, not count down, it's count up. But this tops my list. I saved the best for last. Why does Kirito's blue sword piss me off most out of everything in this video? This one thing legitimately pisses me off worse than 1 through 15 combined. This, in my opinion, is the biggest issue, in my opinion, and demonstrates every single issue. This one little change demonstrates every single issue 1 through 15 with this entire adaptation. Why? Because they didn't even care enough to get a tiny detail as simplistic as his sword right. Let me give you guys perspective on how the light novel explains Kirito's sword. Bear in mind, nearly all of this was cut from the anime. The light novel explicitly says that the Giga Cedar was nearly pitch black because of the sheer amount of light from Solus it was absorbing. And sunlight in real life, it darkens things. That's why your skin gets tan, things like that. It stained the tree with it stained the tree, and as a result, it absorbed the most light, and as a result, it was pitch black. Basically, it was a really, really strong tree. Kirito got the topmost branch of the tree because the topmost branch was the closest to the sun, got the most sunlight, and as a result, was the strongest part of the tree. Because of that, it was also the most black part of the entire tree. As a result, when he went to go get that branch to make his sword, one of the village crafters, I don't remember who it was, they were the one that recommended he take that to begin with in order to make a sword out of it. And he told Kirito to go to a specific person in, I think, the central town. I don't remember where specifically, though. And he said, go to this specific person, try to find him, and he will fashion a sword for you out of this branch. This will be such a massively strong sword because of where it comes from, that it will rival that of the weapons that the Integrity Knights have. I'm forgetting what they're called because I'm recording for like 4 hours now. Just because of where this thing comes from and how powerful and how strong that Giga Cedar was. It also explicitly mentions that later on that the Giga Cedar was actually planted there by, I think it was either by either Wrath or Administrator, but either way, it was intentionally placed there since the beginning of the world. So because of that, it's not like this is some random tree. This is a really fundamental part of the underworld that was taken down by Kirito and Yugo. And as a result, this thing has the same level of importance and object authority as something really comparable to one of the Integrity Knight swords. I'd actually probably argue, I don't know in terms of like its actual authority level, but because it's from the creation of the world, it's really comparable to like what's his name, Bercoli's time-splitting sword, or Alice's whatever her sword is called. Just because those were also fashioned from elements from the original foundation of the world. Now, how does this play any role in what I'm trying to say? This is all world-building elements that were completely cut from the adaptation relating to the origins of his sword. What else is there? The fact that it explicitly basically mentioned it is a pitch black Vanda Black sword. Yet, for whatever reason, instead of making it black, they made his sword blue. For even more perspective, Kirito's Elucidator from Season 1 is more black than his sword, which was dubbed the Black One because of how black it is. That is not an exaggeration. Look on screen at that. How can they screw up so fundamentally simple as the color of his sword? It shows that they show absolutely no level of care for even the most basic aspects of the adaptation. I can understand, to a degree, cutting entire sections of the adaptation. I can understand that, because if you only have 50 episodes, you can't convince the higher ups in order to give you more episodes, or for whatever reason. I can understand that, you know something, you only have so much to work with, and maybe you're only so skilled in order to only do that much. But something as fundamentally basic as screwing up the color of his sword, which had a reason behind it and was explicitly said that it was black for this reason and that it was the blackest thing in the world, yet they make it blue. This, in my opinion, is the most disgusting change of the entire adaptation. Not because it's the most significant, not because it's the most damaging change to the series, because it's the most simple thing that they somehow managed to screw up for no good reason. I can't think of a single reason why they screwed it up. Even if you want to argue that him swinging around a pitch black sword would be nearly impossible to animate, I could somewhat understand that argument. But they didn't make it black. They didn't make it dark black. They made it blue. They made it blue, and that his elucidator, the first sword he had, and nearly every other sword he's ever had, with the exception of the photon sword literally made of light, was more black than this sword. It is disgusting that they got away with this and that they weren't called out for something like this. That's the end of this video. I really, really hope that people understand just how bad this adaptation is, and that more people really call them out for something as simple as this that they screw up. How do you even do that? Anyways, I'll see you guys in the next video.